So the first three, no, it's just this one. Hey everybody, my name is Kelsey, and we're about to get very, very nerdy with some romance recommendations. You guys know I love me some romance. I am a huge, huge romance reader, specifically smutty romances. I have no problem with reading the smut. I've said before, the more smut, the better. But there are a good number of books out there for people who are not as big into the smut and are just there for the good, wholesome romance vibes, which is perfectly fine. I was literally talking about this with some of the people that I work with, and they are more on the romance non-smut side, which made me think about the books that I've read that are relatively clean. So I thought that I would compile a list. There's about eight or nine on this list of books that I would consider clean romances, or the non-steamy, non-smutty side of romance. Almost all of these, I think all of these, are adult books. I look for specifically adult books because it's really easy to find like YA romances that aren't steamy because YA, but I wanted to find some that were specifically for adults. So if this is your thing, stay tuned. I've got a handful of books for you. I will leave everything that I talk about down below. If you'd like to check it out, feel free to do so. But I have some recommendations of books that I've read. A couple of these I think I've written reviews for, so if there is a Goodreads review, I'll leave that down below as well. But here are some recommendations of books that I enjoyed that were not steamy. The first book is one that I read a while ago. I had a early arc of this one, and this is called The Valet Secret, and this is by Jossie S. Kilpack. This is a historical romance where the main characters are older. So the couple in this book is, I think, in their 40s, which is not old by any stretch of the imagination, but when you think of romances, you think of people in their 20s and 30s. So this is for people who want a little bit of an older main character, if that's your thing. This one follows Rebecca and Kenneth, and Rebecca is your average Joe kind of woman. She works as a servant and a maid in the house. She helps her dad with his silhouette business, and she runs into this man in the park who is the valet to the new Earl. They hit it off. Little does she know that this isn't actually the valet. This is the Earl himself, Kenneth, who really just needed to get away. He has been chosen as the new Earl, and so I believe it's his uncle is the current Earl, and he has brought Kenneth into town to kind of train him to be the next Earl. And Kenneth can find this very overpowering sometimes, so he just needs a break. And so one day he decides to go out on his horse in his valet's clothes to get away, and he literally runs into Rebecca. And it's a romance between the two of them. It's a different station romance. You've got some confusion, some mistaken identity a couple of times, but this is a good, wholesome romance. Absolutely no smut in this one, and the two of them are super cute. The tension is very, very high within these books. I'm a big believer in tension. I love tension in books, so a lot of these books are going to have tension but no steam, so just kind of, that's going to be something that's all of these have. But I love the tension between the two of them. I love the conversations. They're very adult about it, and this is definitely a good book for someone who wants those historical fiction vibes, loves things like Bridgerton and things like that, but doesn't want any spice with it. So this is definitely a good book for you. The next two I'm going to do together because they are part of the same series, and that is the first two of the Bells of London series. The first one being the Siren of Sussex. The second one is the Belle of Belgrave Square. Both of these are by Mimi Matthews. This is going to be a quartet, so the next two books in the series are going to come out next year, so you have more things to look forward to. But this is a series of historical romances where we follow a group of girls who have become friends. They all bonded over the fact that they love horse riding. So the first one follows our main character, Evelyn Maltravers, and she is basically the second born, but her older sister has run away, so it's on her to make a good match. And she's like, I'm a wallflower. I do not do well in the ballroom or anything like that, but I can shine when I'm on a horse. So her goal is to find a man by riding a horse, and so she goes to find this man who makes habits, like writing habits, and his name is Ahmed. So you have a historical romance that is different stations, but also is different races as well, because Ahmed is half English, half Indian. And so you have that romance, and then through that we meet all the other girls in the series. This one follows our main character, Julia, who suffers from really, really bad social anxiety. And she runs into this guy named Captain Jasper Blunt. Now, Jasper really needs a wife who has a fortune. His estate is literally crumbling around him. He's got some kids there that he's trying to take care of, and so he needs to marry for money. Julia has really hands-on, let's say, maybe not hands-on, but controlling parents. They both are very, very sickly, and so they think that she is very, very sickly because of that, and so she's just trying to basically get away from her parents. So it's their marriage. So these two are really good if you want that, again, historical romance vibes. The tension in the Siren of Sussex is amazing, because you've got Evelyn and then you've got Ahmed, and Ahmed is literally dressing her because he's making these clothes. So there's so many scenes where he is like measuring her, or he's putting parts of the clothes on her. So there's a lot of that tension where like she is not particularly dressed all the way. She's dressed, but not all the way by standards of this day. So there's absolutely nothing in Siren of Sussex. The Belle of Belgrave Square does have a scene, but it's not described. So just kind of be wary of that if you are not someone who wants spice. But these are good, wholesome books if you want like that Jane Austen vibe, especially this one. The main character Jasper gives me Mr. Darcy vibes. So I love these because there are some things that you see in both of these books that are not your average everyday things that you see in historical romances. But this is a good series that is still continuing to come out. So if you like these two and you like horses, there's definitely some more in this series that is, you got more to look forward to. The next one is Mr. Perfect on Paper by Jean Meltzer. This is a Jewish romance. I loved the Matzo Ball by Jean Meltzer, and now I'm obsessed with her and I want to read all the things that she has written. This follows our main character, Dara, and she is the creator and CEO of this Jewish dating app called JMate. And she comes from a long line of people, of family members, her mother and her grandmother, who love setting up people and creating love matches. And so she's created an app out of it and has become insanely popular with that. So she and her grandmother go on this TV show, which is hosted by a single dad named Chris. And the ratings of the show are kind of starting to dip a little bit. And while they're on air, Dara has terrible, terrible anxiety, and so because of that, everything is scripted. And her grandmother goes off script and basically presents the list of the perfect Jewish husband that Dara created one day when she was drunk, and the ratings skyrocket. And so Chris comes to Dara and they create this plan where she is going to be going on a bunch of dates. They're going to air them in hopes that the ratings are going to help the show, and also he's going to be finding someone who fits this criteria for her. And the criteria is needs to be a doctor or a lawyer, probably a doctor, baggage free, so no previous marriages or children, and of course must be Jewish. And so the two of them are basically trying to set Dara up with her perfect soulmate in hopes that A, she will find the perfect person and no longer be alone, and B, will help the ratings out. But of course it's a thing between Chris and her. This is just honestly your perfect rom-com movie vibes. This is perfect for fans of like old 90s, early 2000s rom-com movies. Like I just can't, like all those stereotypical ones that you can possibly think of. You've Got Mail, things like that. This is the vibe of those movies. So it's super cheesy. The tension between them is fantastic. And I love just everything about this. It's perfect. They're cute together. I love it. So this is definitely one for people, I would say, who love that early 90s rom-com vibes. Also, they're just freaking cute and I love them. The next one is one that I'm pretty sure may have a couple of sex scenes in it, but they're not described. It's more just like, and that happened. So it's all very closed door. And that is The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This is one that I literally have not stopped talking about. I want everyone to read this. I think it's just so good. This was the first book that I give anyone whenever they ask for romance recommendations, because it is so much more than just your stereotypical rom-com romance, which there's nothing wrong with a rom-com romance. You guys know I love that. But if you want more substance to your books, this is it. But also, the synopsis is not true to what actually, like there's so much more to it than just the synopsis. The synopsis sounds bad. Let me explain. This book is from the perspective of 3 different women. We have Siobhan, we have Miranda, and we have Jane. And they all get stood up on Valentine's Day unbeknownst to them, by the same man, Joseph Carter. And this story transitions back and forth between those three men's perspectives and the repercussions of the mistake. The book starts with the guy missing the date, and then him trying to win them back, and their relationship, and blah, 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 blah. But it follows three different women. But it's so much more to that. When I tell you this book is not about a cheating man, it's not about a cheating man. So if cheating is one of your things that you do not want to ever read about, I still say give this book a chance, because like it's so much more than that. But there is so much love and mind effery when it comes to this book that I think is perfect. And also, from what I remember, there's no described sex scenes. So if you want something that is maybe like you're okay like reading that happens, but like you don't want any details, this is definitely a book, because I'm thinking of one scene specifically that I know that happens, but it's not described. So this is definitely way more than just a romance. It has a lot more to it, but it's really just this beautiful romance that I cannot explain to you how amazing this story is. Like it's just so good. So please, if I haven't pitched you to read it yet, oh my gosh, please read this book. But that's a good one to read as well. The next one is actually an entire series, but I'm really just choosing the first one in the series because it is the best one for no sex, in my opinion. And that is the Rajay series by Sanaya Dev. This one is Pride and Prejudice and Other Flavors. There are 4 books in this series. This series is really, really good. The books, as you progress in the series, you see more and more of the smutty scenes, but none of them are outright ridiculous, but this one doesn't have any of that in it. And this series basically is a reimagining of a bunch of different Jane Austen books. We have Pride and Prejudice, the second one is about persuasion, the third one is Sense and Sensibility, and the fourth one is Emma. And it follows the same family, this Indian American family, and a different member in this family in each book. And each book tackles something big. So these are good books if you want, again, more substance to your romance. You don't want just a book that's a nice cheesy romance. It has that. It's beautiful. I love it. But it meshes that really well with real world issues. This one tackles a little bit of police brutality. Just a little bit. Not too much. But that is a conversation in here. The second one deals with suicide. The third one deals with shootings. And the fourth one deals with sexism in the STEM workplace. Not necessarily STEM, but just like healthcare. So each one deals with something. And the farther you get into the series, the more that serious discussion is talked about. So this is the most romance heavy, but the point of the series is all romances. And they're just so good. And it's very, very minimal Jane Austen inspiration. So if you are not a Jane Austen fan, but something about the series sounds interesting, still give it a chance, because like the plot is very loosely based on Jane Austen. There are hints in there, but you don't have to be a Jane Austen fan to enjoy the series. It's just like the author took inspiration from Jane Austen. But this is an amazing multicultural kind of romance, if that is more your thing. And this one deals with cooking. We follow our main character, who is Teresa, and she is a doctor. And then you've also got the guy that she's falling in love with, DJ, who's a chef. So you've got some cooking in there, and then you've also got a woman in healthcare. So there's a lot with this one. There's some stuff with her family, that kind of stuff, but seriously, so good. The next one technically is YA. This is the only book on this list that is technically YA, but it doesn't feel like YA, which is why I wanted to mention it here, and that is Being Mary Bennett by J.C. Peterson. This book follows a girl named Marnie Barnes, who basically, through a series of unfortunate events at the beginning of the book, figures out that she is Mary Bennett, the middle forgotten sister of the Bennett family from Pride and Prejudice. So another kind of Pride and Prejudice inspired. This is not based on Pride and Prejudice in any way. There's no like correlation with the plot as far as like a Darcy character and all those types of things, but this is inspired by the characters of Pride and Prejudice. And Marnie is in a like boarding school of sorts, so she's like high school aged, and it's her basically trying to come into her own. She said that she's no longer going to be Mary Bennett. She's going to become Elizabeth. She's going to be the main character of her own story, and the shenanigans that ensue from that. It has to do with books and dogs and animals of sorts. So if you were an animal lover and a book lover, which I feel like you are if you're on this channel, then this is definitely a good one. It's really about a girl coming into her own. But because they are younger characters, there's no... The romance is like a little different than I would expect from any kind of romance book. I would say this is maybe more contemporary than romance, but it does have romance elements, so I wanted to mention it here. And again, I feel like these characters are very adult and the way that they handle some things. So that's why I wanted to mention it, even though it is technically YA. I wanted to mention it because I just felt like it was such a good book. And if you want that kind of coming of age vibe, this is definitely your thing. The next one is another historical romance, and that is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is for my fans who love fantasy and like historical romance. So the way that it was marketed to me was Pride and Prejudice with fairies. So there's fantasy elements, which is great. There's that historical romance, like Bath vibes, which is great. And it has to do with fairies. This is really good for fans of like Bridgerton. You want those vibes. You want the tension that's in Bridgerton if you've seen the show or read the books. If you want that tension, this is perfect, minus all of the smut scenes. So this one follows our main character Theodora, or Dora, and when she's younger, she basically somehow gets in this weird bargain with like a fae, and half of her soul is taken. And so what that basically means is that her emotions are very, very muted. So she can't really feel a lot of things. She looks a lot of really stoic and kind of passive a lot of the time because of said emotions. And in doing so, that causes an issue for her aunt who she's living with, who wants to marry her off, and like no one will marry her. This book really kicks off, like the story, plot-wise, kicks off when she and her cousin go to London because it's time for her cousin to join the marriage mark, basically. In doing so, she runs into the Lord Sorcier, which basically is like the official government's magic person, for lack of a better word. And in doing so, he and her kind of like strike up this weird friendship, non-friendship, and he ends up trying to help her figure out what's going on and see if she can get her soul back. And so through that, there's a lot of magic, but the magic is very much like, what if magic really existed in like this time period, this is how I believe they would do it. So there's definitely a lot of elements of this that it's like very, not high fantasy, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's very chill. A lot of people don't have magic, but magic is just a common understood thing in the society. So it's their relationship as they try to figure out what is going on. And I honestly just love them. So this is another good one if you like those types of vibes. And the last one is for my friends out there who love the like giggly butterfly feelings that you get when it comes to romance. And that is The Off Limits Rule, and this is by Sarah Adams. I read this one, the very first book that I read in May was this book, and I am obsessed with this one. So this one is basically a brother's best friend kind of romance. This follows our main characters, Lucy and Cooper, and Lucy is a single mom, and she basically kind of runs out of money, and I believe she gets fired from her job, or she quits her job, and moves in with her brother. She moves back home in with her brother, and in doing so, her brother's kind of trying to get her out of the works. Also, she went through a terrible breakup, so she's got that issue as well, and so he's trying to get her out of like the depths of her breakup, and in doing so, introduces her to his best friend Cooper. But Cooper is known as like the player, and so he's like, no, you and Cooper can never be a thing. And he tells Cooper the same, you and Lucy can never be a thing. And because of that, they are really attracted to each other. And so it's their friendship romance situation, but the tension between them is amazing. And there's no sex on the page, so if you are someone who wants zero, absolutely clean book, this is your book. The way that they just genuinely care for each other is some of the sweetest I've ever read. I was reading this audibly at work, and my coworker is the one who actually read it first and told me to read it, and I was updating her like every single minute, every time I was reading this, because I wanted her to have all the feelings. And it's like, it gives you like that bubbly feeling. Also, the writing is just genuinely hilarious. I laughed out loud at least once a chapter, if not more, and most times it was more. So I just loved this book. I thought it was fun. It's laugh out loud good, and the romance is perfect. And also the fact that she's a single mom, you've got that whole like paternal instinct as well kicking in when you see him and her son kind of like get to know each other as well. So you have those vibes as well, which is really sweet. And they're just perfect, and their moments together are beautiful. I love them so much, but this is a really, really good one as well. But that's it. That is a look at some of the books that I would consider pretty good, clean romances. I've loved every single one of the books in this video, so I hope that you guys found this video enjoyable or if you are someone who wants clean romances, here's some good recommendations for you, but always please let me know what you think down below. If you have any good recommendations yourself, I would love to know, because while I do love smut, it's always nice to have a good clean romance every once in a while. So I love them as well, and I am always looking to add more romances to my shelf. Like, I love romances, so I will add all of them, honestly. But if you like this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media and other bookish links down there, so don't forget to check all that out, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!